Hello and welcome to the April 12th, 2026 episode of Nick's News. I am your host Nick, brought to you by Some Budget Studios. That's right, we're paying for this project of ours. We're live every Sunday, and I thank you all so much for tuning in or catching the replay on the Nick's News YouTube channel. This is a program dedicated to bringing good news to counter all the bad news that we are bombarded with on a daily basis, with the hope of bringing a little bit of joy back to the world. Several of our articles are pulled from sites like Industry Tap, Live Science, Positive.news, and GoodGoodGood.co, but we appreciate everything sent in by you, the Nick's Newsies. Good evening, everybody. Hello, Christian. Hello, Becky. So happy to have everybody with us tonight. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. So, it is the month of my birth. Let's get into our news, Brew. It's the month of my birth, and lucky for me, Point Brewing Company released a 4-pack of absolutely amazing stouts that seem to be tailored specifically to my tastes. Now, every morning I get up and I enjoy a nice cup of joe, and I've got a selection of creamers that I can cycle through to keep things interesting. So the obvious choice for our next brew out of that 4-pack is Nocturnal Nosh Coffee and Vanilla. And I love the artwork on this can with this owl coming in with the full moon behind it. It's just really cool. Hi, Sci-Fi Synth. Hi, Nick. Been tuning in for a little while. Thanks for spreading positivity. Sci-Fi Synth, thank you very much for tuning in and for those kind words. That's fantastic. We really appreciate that. Nordic Wolf says their signal's being a pain. Sorry to hear that, Nordic. So, yeah, this is a 13.5% ABV, high-octane Imperial Pastry Stout. Cheers to me and to everybody watching. Hey, Nico. Man, Sci-Fi Synth, I am really happy to hear that. Thank you very much for those kind words. So, because it is a fantastic high-octane stout, we, of course, need the Harpoon Snifter. My limited edition, which it had to just say on it, limited edition Harpoon Snifter. So, let's get into the theatrics of a 5-minute pour. We don't need the Balisong bottle opener because it ain't a bottle. But we'll blow the gain on the audio real fast with a nice good crack. Wow. And we'll get into the theatrics of a 5-minute pour. I had an unbelievable stout over the weekend. New Holland Brewing comes out with a version of their Dragon's Milk stout called Triple Mash, and it usually clocks in at an astoundingly high and ridiculous 17%. They just did a special... Oh, the coffee on... Oh, the vanilla! Hello there! So, it's black as can be. But that beer from New Holland, so they just came out with a new bourbon release. They came out with a maple bourbon. I got to try it, and I might give it another try and pick up a bottle. I don't know yet. But they did barrel age the triple mash in the maple barrels. And the flavor of maple is something that I absolutely adore. So, it was an amazing beer. It came out to 19.9%, and it was awesome to try. Nordic says, blame T-Mobile. LOL, they updated their tower section, messed up, and thus screwed up the rest of the tower, and they ain't even my carrier either. Nordic, I'm really sorry to hear that. Pour one out in the chat for Nordic. Take a sip, take a cheers for Nordic and their internet trouble. And hopefully it will be corrected soon. Wow. Whoa. I could have drank that this morning to wake up. Holy crap. That's high octane and just straight coffee. Oh man, that's the stuff I drink when I go hunting. Just the blackest coffee possible. With a little bit of creamer. Dirty Rogue says, as the kids say, sip sip. All right. Shoutouts. let me tell you a thing or two about Speek Geek Voice Acting. In the world of voiceover, Anthony can be anyone, be it hero or villain, prince or pauper, shy guy, or the exuberant life of the party. Contact him if you need character voiceover, corporate voiceover, including IVR and voice on hold, or commercial voiceover. Anthony says, let's work together so we can give your project the voice that it deserves. To Speek Geek Voice Acting, cheers. Becky is having a cherry moscato. Very demure. News quote. Oh, Nordic's got strawberry watermelon flavor enhancer in their water. Good choice. So, news quote. It's only apt that we continue on the kick of space, given everything that's happened with space. Space! So, this quote, I really like this quote because it's short, it's sweet, and it is anything and everything to just hold on to and emulate. We are infinite beings with infinite possibilities. That comes from Dr. Bernard Anthony Harris Jr., who was born in 1956, who was an American businessman, and I see I have a typo for businessman, so I'm going to have to correct that in post, and founder of the nonprofit Harris Foundation, and a former NASA astronaut who was the first African American to perform a spacewalk, which they did on their second flight on the space shuttle. I really love that quote because when you look at the grand scheme of things, we are capable of anything and everything, be it alone or together. We have the incredible power of imagination, and through that, we can make incredible things come to life. So, we are infinite beings with infinite possibilities. Thank you for that one, Dr. Bernard Anthony Harris Jr. Cheers. Christian's got Smirnoff Ice Blue Raspberry. Fantastic. And I saw Sci-Fi Synth asked, thoughts on Angry Orchard? So back in the day when I was a young man, I can't tell you how much Angry Orchard was consumed, but it was a copious amount. And my favorite was that Angry Orchard would come out with variety packs. And they really were, like, there was also Woodchuck. I think back then the big two for ciders were Angry Orchard and Woodchuck. And there was a third one in there, but they never really had a lot of variety. And I found myself drinking a lot of Angry Orchard at the time. And especially, like, I think they had an elderflower. And that was one of my favorites of all time from them. I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know if it's still in rotation. But Angry Orchard, I mean, if you want to drink a absolute metric crap ton of sugar, and you have the metabolism to process that on top of the alcohol and not get that sugar headache, I don't know if I personally am capable of that anymore, but I have never really had problems with Angry Orchard. I enjoyed it when I was younger. Maybe I'll pick some up and give it a try, especially if I can find that elderflower one. If that one's still out there, like, I'll grab it and I'll try it again. Nordic says, Angry Orchard is dangerous because it doesn't taste really like alcohol. That is correct. It does not. There's just so much sugar. And sometimes those are real difficult for folks to process. Back then I used to be able to. Now I'm pretty sure my metabolism has slowed down a little bit, and my liver does not like to it doesn't like to multitask. Nordic used to mix theirs with Sprite, so you would make it worse. Oh, God. Oh, man. I think I felt my pancreas, shut down for a moment there thinking about that. All right. Bug update. There's another chirping cricket. There's always a risk when you take care of anything that eats crickets, or other bugs for that matter. When you raise pet friends and you want them to be healthy, you want to feed them healthy meals. And that means you're eventually going to start raising those meals to control what's going into them, which controls what's going into your pet friend. Now, my pet friends happen to be 4 scorpions. So that means that I'm feeding them invertebrates, which means I'm raising the invertebrates that I'm going to feed to other invertebrates because I want to control what is going into those feeders. It's not that I don't trust like Petco, Pet Supplies Plus. I actually pick up crickets from Pet Supplies Plus to add more breeding stock if mine gets low. I raise superworms and mealworms and dubia roaches as well to feed to these 4, monstrosities. But that means you're going to run into problems, and one of those problems is chirping crickets. You got to have them. They're going to keep the population going, but they're going to make a ton of noise. And I don't like that. So it means Ripley is probably going to get another melodic meal this week. I've put 2 of them in with Little John, and there's a third one that will be going in with Ripley at some point. So otherwise, everything else is good in the bug world. I'm hoping that since things have warmed up early, Elmira, our tailed whip scorpion, will wake up soon. She will be really fantastic to see, but we will keep an eye out. So, Nordic says, I don't have much issues with sugar processing. I was the forget to eat idiot. Oh, yes, that's not a good thing to do. Becky asked Producer Donna how Producer Donna's GoFundMe is going. Producer Donna does have a GoFundMe active. Producer Donna, if you want to post that into the chat, that would be fantastic, so folks can access that. If you would like, it's at your leisure. It's your GoFundMe. You do with it as you please, Producer Donna. So, to the bugs. I always forget it's reversed. To that bug right there. Sup, Little John? That right there is our Emperor Scorpion, Little John, in the background. He's out for a walk. He's actually very active, which is nice to see. And behind him, I don't know, maybe we'll see him. Way back there is Sue. I got some pictures of Sue for the Instagram this week, so check out our Instagram on Tuesday to see 2 snapshots of Sue. He usually likes to hang out in his burrow, but I'm hoping at some point he comes out because he is a unit. He is a huge Asian forest scorpion, and he is impressive, to say the least. So I'd love to see him come out. Producer Donna has posted a link to a GoFundMe that she has right now going on. Every little bit helps. We thank you all very much. Let's get into our good news. Our broadcast is broken up into 4 major categories, and those categories are science and technology, health and medicine, flora and fauna, aka plants and animals, and wholesome notes, the really nice, touchy-feely articles that we like to finish out the episodes on. So we're going to start off in category 1, science and technology. We've got one article in here, and we called it, You've Probably Never Heard of This Before, because we sure hadn't. So I will copy and paste this article in the chat if y'all want to check it out at your leisure. And as a reminder, all of the links to our articles can be found in the descriptions of this video if you want to check them out. We implore that you do so that these sites can continue to get traffic. Don't just take me reading them for it. There's plenty of good news on these sites to check out. So add these to your weekly good news rotations if you want to, get some pick-me-ups from the ridiculousness that we're hit with every day. Japan just switched on Asia's first osmotic power plant, which runs 24/7 on nothing but fresh water and seawater. This was published to ZME Science on April 3rd of 2026 by Tudor Torita. On a humid morning in Fukuoka, Fukuoka, in Fukuoka, a coastal city in southern Japan, a new kind of power came online. Japan has launched Asia's first osmotic power plant, which generates electricity by mixing fresh water with salt water. It's a meaningful plan, the start of a plan, perhaps, in our response against climate change, said Kenji Hirokawa, director of the Seawater Desalination Center, which runs the facility, as per Gizmodo. Fukuoka's plant is only the second of its kind worldwide, following one in Denmark that opened in 2023. Japan's version is larger and marks a step toward It marks a step forward for this little used but promising renewable energy source. The plant will generate about 880,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per year, enough to help run a nearby desalination facility and supply around 220 homes. That equals the output of 2 soccer fields of solar panels, but osmotic power keeps running day and night in any weather. Osmosis is the same process that helps plants draw water from soil and allows our cells to stay hydrated. Put simply, it's the movement of water from one area with low salt concentration, like fresh water, to areas with high salt concentration, like seawater, through a special membrane. Osmotic power plants put this passive movement to work. Fresh water, or treated wastewater, is placed on one side of a membrane. On the other side is seawater, made even saltier by concentrating leftover brine from the desalination process. The difference in saltiness puts the fresh water across the membrane, increasing the pressure on the saltwater side. The pressure is then used to drive a turbine, generating electricity. It is also noteworthy that the Japanese plant uses concentrated seawater, the brine left after removal of fresh water in a desalination plant, as the feed, which increases the difference in salt concentrations and thus the energy available. Professor Sandra Kentish, a chemical engineer at the University of Melbourne, told The Guardian. The process is completely renewable. It produces no carbon dioxide. And because oceans and seas are virtually boundless for this task, osmotic power is a stable source of electricity generation that can operate 24 hours a day for every day of the year, Hirokawa told NHK, translated from Japanese. For something that sounds so elegantly simple, osmotic power has been stubbornly difficult to scale. While energy is released when the salt water is mixed with fresh water, a lot of energy is lost in pumping the two streams into the power plant and from the frictional loss across the membranes. This means that the net energy that can be gained is small, said Kentish. The breakthrough moment arrived back in 2009, when the Norwegian energy firm Statkraft unveiled one of the world's first prototype osmotic power plants. The 4-kilowatt demonstration facility showed that mixing fresh and salt water could indeed be harnessed to produce electricity. But despite the proof of principle, high costs kept the technology confined to laboratories and small pilot projects. The challenge lies in efficiency. Pumps use a power to move water into the system, and membranes can slow things down due to friction. These hurdles are not unsolvable, but they've kept osmotic power in the shadows of its counterparts, wind, solar, and hydroelectric. Still, research across the globe has kept the idea alive. In addition to Denmark and Japan, pilot projects have cropped up in Norway, South Korea, Spain, and Qatar. Australia paused its prototype plant at the University of Technology Sydney, or UTS, during the COVID pandemic. But Dr. Ali Altei, a specialist in water energy systems at UTS, hopes that it can be revived. We have salt lakes around New South Wales and Sydney that could be used as a resource, and we also have the expertise to build it, he told The Guardian. Akihiko Tanioka, professor emeritus at the Institute of Science Tokyo and a pioneer in the field, showed visible emotion at the launch. I feel overwhelmed that we have been able to put this into practical use. I hope it spreads, not just in Japan, but across the world, he told Kyoto News. Today, osmotic power contributes only a microscopic fraction of global electricity, But if technical challenges can be solved, researchers say it could eventually meet up to 15% of the global energy demand by 2050. That would make it one of the largest untapped renewable sources on Earth. What gives osmotic power its unique edge is consistency. Wind slows and clouds can obstruct the sun, but rivers never stop running to the sea. Wherever fresh water meets salt water, estuaries, deltas, and coasts, there's potential for power. The Fukuoka facility is modest by global standards, but it is real and it's operating. And it is the first of its kind in Asia. As the need for reliable, clean energy grows, the simple act of mixing fresh and salt water could play a bigger role. That is really neat. Nordic Wolf said that they saw this on Instagram. Also not surprised this was Japan. They have more green energy than most of the world. Makes sense. To everybody involved in Fukuoka and the seawater desalination center over there, in building an osmotic power plant, the first of its kind in Asia. Cheers. I'm going to be done with this stream by 10 o'clock. I'm going to wake back up because of this coffee beer. Jeez. It's strong. It's very strong. Ooh. I think Little John might have caught something back there. I just saw his tail, like, waving in the air like he was maybe gonna sting something. He might have something in his claws right now. He's gone digging. I won't get up to check anything out, I promise. Gosh, we were just talking about adult ADHD last episode. Nordic, I can assure they also built in animal paths too and avoided damaging migration paths. I can bet that. Alright, that's going to get us out of science and technology. We're going to move on to category 2. Health and medicine. And we've got 2 articles in health and medicine. If Charlie comes in before we get to that second health and medicine article, they can yell at me about my Spanish translations. So hopefully Charlie will show up. Actually, a shout out. I know that it is my brother Eric and Charlie, their son Arthur. It's his birthday today. So Charlie might not be joining because they are celebrating Arthur's birthday. Happy birthday to Arthur. Cheers. Becky said, wake up and get drunk again. Dirty Rogue followed it up. That's called a second wind, Becky. All right. So this first article for health and medicine we called, for the 400,000th time, go touch some grass. I will copy and paste this into the chat if y'all want to check it out at your leisure. Nordic says the Irish call that Tuesday. A study of 38,000 people across the world found that a connection to nature improves well-being. This was published at goodgoodgood.co on April 6th of 2026 by, these are 3 new names. Stylianos Syropoulos, Christina Jinhi Capozzoli, and Leah Barbett. I am not familiar with those 3 names to goodgoodgood.co. Usually we've just got Megan and Cameron, but we got some new folks. Fantastic. All right. When life feels overwhelming, many people instinctively turn to nature. A walk in a park, sitting by the ocean, watching a sunset. Is this just a pleasant feeling, or is there something deeper at work? A multitude of studies have linked spending time in nature with different aspects of mental health and wellness. For example, immersing oneself in outdoor natural spaces seems to lift depression and influence brain activity patterns. The effect may be especially relevant in children. But most research on this question have looked at people living in so-called weird societies, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. As environmental psychologists based in the US and in Germany, we were part of a team of more than 100 researchers who set out to examine this phenomenon on a global scale and determine how consistent it is around the world. Across countries as diverse as Brazil, Japan, Nigeria, Germany, and Indonesia, they saw a clear pattern. People who felt more connected to nature also reported higher well-being. Researchers who study people's relationships with the natural world often use the term nature connectedness. This phrase doesn't simply mean going hiking or visiting a park. Nature connectedness refers to the extent to which people see nature as part of who they are, whether they feel an emotional bond with the natural world and experience a sense of oneness with it. Someone who has a high degree of nature connectedness might agree with statements like, "My relationship to nature is an important part of who I am. It reflects identity and meaning, not just exposure." We drew on data collected between, they wrote this article. It seems like these three wrote this article in a first-person perspective or a group perspective. I will attempt to change the perspective a little bit because obviously I was not part of this team, but I do feel connected to this article. They drew on data collected between 2020 and 2022 from more than 38,000 participants through a large international collaboration that was established to gauge how people responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll tell you how a lot of people responded. Not well. Participants came from 75 countries and were on average in their teens, 20s, or 30s. They completed questionnaires that explored the link between people's bond with nature and several aspects of well-being. The questionnaires probed people's sense of purpose in life, their feelings of hope, life satisfaction, and optimism, their sense of resilience, and their ability to cope with stress they felt, as well as whether they practice mindfulness as they go through their everyday life. Across this large international sample, this group found that people who felt more connected to nature consistently reported higher levels of well-being and mindfulness. This was true not just for feeling satisfied with life, but also for deeper aspects of flourishing, such as having a sense of direction and meaning. And these associations held even when accounting for age and gender. They also explored whether specific characteristics of a country strengthen the benefits of feeling connected with nature. For example, the group looked at things such as how well countries take care of their air, water systems, and ecosystems, as well as whether citizens have equal access to education, democratic participation, and other key social and financial resources, and whether cultures tend to prioritize collective well-being over individual priorities. There were some differences, but the main takeaway was pretty clear. A connection with nature and well-being shows up across a wide range of economic, cultural, and environmental contexts. In other words, the psychological benefits of feeling connected to nature do not appear to be limited to wealthy Western nations or specific cultural worldviews. Hey, Sean. Sean's late, but here. One reason why feeling a connection with nature may be linked to well-being is that nature connectedness fosters mindfulness, the ability to be present and attentive. In the group's data, people who had a stronger sense of nature connectedness tended to have a higher degree of mindfulness, which is itself strongly linked to mental health. Another possibility is that bonding with nature may also make people more resilient. People who feel connected to something larger than themselves may find it easier to cope with stress and uncertainty. A sense of belonging, even to the natural world, can provide psychological grounding in a world characterized by stressors. There may also be a feedback loop. Feeling better may encourage people to engage more deeply with nature, strengthening the bond over time. The findings matter beyond academic debates. Around the world, policymakers are increasingly recognizing the links between human health and environmental sustainability. International agreements such as the Convention of Biological Diversity, a landmark treaty that was signed by 196 countries back in 1992, emphasize the importance of restoring humanity's relationship with nature. The policy actions seek to protect Earth's ecosystems, but the results suggest they may also benefit people's psychological well-being. Similarly, designing cities with accessible green spaces, incorporating nature-based experiences into schools, and supporting community engagement with local environments may do more than beautify neighborhoods. They may also help people flourish. Across cultures, languages, and economic systems, feeling connected to the natural world is consistently linked to living a more hopeful, purposeful, and resilient life. At a time when mental health challenges are rising globally, reconnecting with nature is not a luxury, but a fundamental and widely shared human need. This article was written by Stylianos Siropoulos and Christina Jinhi Capozzoli from Arizona State University and Leah Barbet from Fen Universitat in Hagen, and was originally published on The Conversation. Link is in the article. To this trio and everybody involved in this study about nature connectedness and the incredible benefits it can have to your mental health and finding your direction in life. Cheers. I will say that I experience a level of nature connectedness. I have filled my home with as much nature. Actually, I could probably fill it with more nature. But right now, kind of just working with the nature that I've got. Coffee plant, scarlet star, Thanksgiving cactus, 4 scorpions, all of the feeders to feed them. I've got a ton of plants out in my living room. I've got a lucky bamboo that's like taller than I am, which isn't difficult, but it's pretty tall. Pretty much just surrounding myself with nature in my own home and going out into nature when I can. Hey, Tesla Tree Service. Heart trees. I love that. So there is something special to nature connectedness. Recently, the nature preserve that I go walking through opened back up, and I took a walk for the first time this year through it. I saw 2 koi in this giant pond that they've got. I saw a herd of deer, and it was really just something else to be walking along the trails again. So there really is something to touching grass. All right, next article. And this is the one where if Charlie is not watching, I know Charlie will watch the VOD and will message me afterwards just thrashing me about my Spanish pronunciations. So here we go. What we called this next article is Un paso en la dirección más saludable. I know I screwed up part of that. I'll copy and paste this into the chat if y'all want to check this article out. Mexico moves toward a historic universal healthcare system. This was published to Be Latina on April 10th of 2026 by Be Latina Daily. There's Tim laughing at me. Hey, Tim. Mexico moves toward a single public healthcare system under President Claudia Sheinbaum, with a plan that will combine the country's main state-run institutions into one structure. The proposal sets a clear timeline and aims to change how patients access care across the country. The Servicio Universal de Salud will bring together the Mexican Social Security Institute, the Institute for Social Security and Services for State Workers, and IMSS Benestar. These institutions currently operate separately, and the plan will allow patients to receive care at any of them, regardless of affiliation. The first phase of Mexico's universal healthcare system will begin in January of 2027 and focuses on a set of medical services that will be available across all institutions. Emergency care, hospital stays, high-risk pregnancies, heart attacks, strokes, breast cancer diagnosis, ongoing treatment for cancer and kidney disease, and vaccines will all be included. Simply put, any person in Mexico will be able to seek care at any public institution and receive attention. That approach shifts the current model, where access depends on where a patient is registered. Sean says, welcome to Canada of the South. Becky says, true and friend... Becky, regarding the last article, true Friend and I went to the trail by their house. She has Parkinson's, so we didn't go far, but great to get out for sure. That's awesome. Nordic says, what vague bits I remember, you're pronouncing decent. Little strong on some, but yeah, thank you, Nordic. Charlie will eviscerate me, so I'll expect that text. Maybe I'll post it to like the Instagram when she tears me apart. Where were we? There it is. The second phase of this entire project will begin in the second half of 2027 and will allow institutions to share specialized services. Laboratories, imaging, and radiotherapy will operate across systems, which means patients will be able to complete tests and treatments without delays tied to institutional limits. Health officials explain that this step focuses on reducing wait times and improving coordination. Patients who begin treatment for serious conditions will remain in the same institution throughout their care. The third phase is scheduled for 2028 and will expand the system further. Prescriptions will be valid across institutions. Specialist consultations will be coordinated through referrals, and primary care will follow the same approach for chronic illnesses such as diabetes. The government is also building a national registry that will connect medical records across institutions. A new health credential is already being issued and will allow patients to check their coverage and locate available facilities. Future updates will include appointment scheduling, digital records, and telemedicine. This plan follows earlier efforts to expand public healthcare access. Previous reforms replaced Seguro Popular with a new model that struggled due to funding and planning gaps. The current proposal moves forward with a structured timeline and a focus on coordination. However, its success will depend on how well these institutions work together and whether the system can deliver consistent care across the country. I am hoping that both are achieved. So, to everybody involved in the country of Mexico working towards historic universal health care across the country, good luck and cheers. Sean says, oh look, a health campus network? Gee, that feels familiar. Sean is one of our resident Canadians and loves to give us the Canadian view of things from time to time. Centralized provincial healthcare. OHIP has been trying to reach you about your extended healthcare. Thank you, Sean. It'd be so funny if we figure out how to do how to get multiple people in on being able to chat during these like we have when producer Donna tunes in. We should definitely have producer Donna and Sean come in with like the Canadian perspective. Nordic says, I wish universal healthcare was a thing here. Don't we all? Don't we all? All right, that's going to get us out of health and medicine. We're going to move on to category 3, flora and fauna, aka plants and animals. So, we got 2 articles in this section, and we called this first one, Can I Get a Whoop Whoop for the Whooping Crane? And this one was sent in by Cassidy. So Cassidy, thank you very much. Give me some whoop whoops in the chat for the Whooping Crane. And I will copy and paste this article in there if y'all want to check it out. There we go. Thank you all for the whoop whoops. One of the rarest birds in North America just visited a restored coastal marsh in Michigan. This was published to MLive on April 8th of 2026, by Justine Lofton. Sorry, Justine. A distinguished guest recently graced this northern Michigan marshland with a rare visit. This was up in Arcadia, Michigan. I live in Michigan, so this one's a little close to home. A whooping crane, one of the most threatened birds in North America, was spotted at Arcadia Marsh in northern Manistee County, the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy, which manages the preserve, announced. These bright white birds have black wingtips and a red featherless patch on their heads. They stand nearly 5 feet tall, the tallest bird on the continent, on thin black legs, and they've got a wingspan of 7 to 8 feet. These things are dinosaurs. Whooping cranes almost went extinct in the 1930s after decades of habitat loss and unregulated hunting. Prior to European settlement, whooping cranes numbered in the tens of thousands. By 1860, there were 1,400. In 1938, there were only 15 remaining. The Endangered Species Act became law in 1973, and a slow recovery began. There are 800 to 900 of these cranes out there today. The visitor to Arcadia Marsh was traveling with sandhill cranes and is likely part of a small whooping crane population that migrates between Wisconsin and Florida, making stops to rest and feed along the way. Although our visitor has moved on, we are grateful it found Arcadia Marsh, Arcadia Dunes, and the surrounding mosaic of land suitable for a stopover, GTRLC said. It is a good indicator that decades of land protection and restoration are providing resources to wildlife that require healthy habitats to thrive. The whooping cranes in Wisconsin are part of a reintroduction effort that began back in 2001. There are around 60 individuals as of fall of 2025, according to the International Crane Foundation. The main population, descended from those 15 surviving cranes in 1938, migrates between Wood Buffalo National Park in Alberta, Canada, and the Arkansas National Wildlife Refuge in Texas. I think that means the Arkansas National Wildlife Refuge in Texas, but it's missing the K. It's a roughly 2,500-mile journey, one of the longest of any bird species, and they require many high-quality places to rest during the migration. We can all feel good knowing that at least one whooping crane, among dozens of other migrating bird species, appreciates the work we do together and the role we all play in looking after the bigger picture, GTRLC said. Arcadia Marsh is a 305-acre nature preserve in northern Manistee County. It's one of only 16 remaining coastal marshes on the Lake Michigan coast of the state's lower peninsula. A 3/4-mile, universally accessible boardwalk through the marsh opened back in 2019. It's known as one of the top 10 birdwatching sites in Michigan. There are 2 trailheads with access to the Arcadia Marsh boardwalk, the St. Pierre Road and M22, and you can find directions in a link that's in the article. A 1/4-mile section in the middle of the boardwalk will be closed this year from April 15th to July 15th to give sensitive wetland bird species some space during their peak nesting season. The marsh is home to around 250 bird species, including 17 that are endangered, threatened, or of special concern. More than 200 plant species and about 28 species of fish also call the marsh home. Restoration of Arcadia Marsh took years of intensive efforts, and maintenance is still ongoing. But it was good enough to get a whooping crane, and that is really good news. To everybody involved at Arcadia Marsh and in pretty much keeping the whooping crane population alive and continuing to rise, and to the whooping crane that decided to stop on over, and to Cassidy for sending us this article. Cheers. Charlie has hit the chat. Says, I'll have to watch the replay so I can yell at Nick later. Becky said I really tried. Thanks, Becky. Tim said it was a valiant effort. And Charlie also said, I can't give him too much of a hard time. I'm barely bilingual and also dyslexic. Thanks, Charlie. Go easy on me. Sean says, the Canadian Cobra Chicken, our backup Air Force, may have beef with the migration data. Sean, I need to send you a picture. When I went through that wildlife preserve that's by my house, when I took a walk, I was within a foot of 2 cobra chickens, and they were not hissing at me. They barely even cared, and I got a sweet picture of me like deuces with them, and not a peep out of them. So maybe they don't hate me as much anymore. I don't know. All right, our next flora and fauna article we called Bottom Trawling Gets Deep Sixed. I'll copy and paste this into the chat if y'all want to check it out. Producer Donna said, take them some frozen peas next time. Sean says, I was likely outside the nesting boundary. I mean, I hope they were right there on the side of the water, so I don't know what their nesting boundaries are. It was just pretty neat. Trawling ban sparks marine recovery. This was published to the BBC on the 18th of March of 2026 by Craig Buchan. A conservation project is reporting increased black sea bream and mussel beds stretching more than 1 kilometer, 5 years since a ban on bottom trawling went into effect. Sussex Kelp Recovery Project, or the SKRP, said a quiet but powerful transformation is unfolding beneath the waves since its launch half a decade ago. The project followed the introduction of a bylaw in 2021 protecting a 117 square mile or 302 square kilometer area between Shoreham and Selsey in West Sussex. SKRP Kelp Recovery Coordinator George Short said, "It's given me enormous joy to see this sign of hope in what is a time of really difficult environmental change." She said that the observed mussel beds were really important because this is one of the habitats that the protection was put in place to recover. Bream has been particularly vulnerable to trawling because they make their nests on the seabed, Short said, but video surveys were detecting increases in numbers. She said one video survey had recorded 92 species. The Kelp Recovery Coordinator told the BBC that restored habitats through benefits like storm and erosion protection and supported sustainable fisheries. According to Sussex Wildlife Trust, 96% of the country's kelp forests present in the late 1970s had disappeared by 2019. The Sussex Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority, or the IFCA, nearshore trawling bylaw prohibited bottom trawling in the designated area, which the trust said gave habitats the breathing space they need to recover. Sussex IFCA said that it had actively enforced and monitored the impact of the bylaw, and that compliance with the bylaw has been very good. Short said the project had received a lot of reports from local fishers and local freedivers that had fed into their research and monitoring. Dr. Ray Ward, reader in environmental science at Queen Mary University of London, said rewilding doesn't happen overnight, but that seeing increases in a commercially important species like the black sea bream through our underwater video surveys is a promising start. To everybody involved with banning seabed trawling, or in this case, it's bottom trawling, and to all of the different organizations that are pushing for the end of that practice and for giving these ecosystems a chance to regrow. Cheers. I'm not much of a bottom trawling fan. All right, that's going to get us out of flora and fauna. We're going to move on to category 4, the wholesome notes. We've got 2 articles for you tonight here in Wholesome Notes. I love both of them. I think they're great opportunities. I think the first one is a fantastic opportunity to be emulated by so many other institutions And I'm going to warn you right now, the second one is an I'm not crying, you're crying article. So, if you have seen our content before and you faced the onslaught of the I'm not crying, you're crying articles, go grab your Kleenex, because you might just have a little bit of moisture under your eye. But I'll get into our first article in the Wholesome Notes, which we called Stepping Up to Answer 338 Prayers. And I will copy and paste this into the chat if you all want to check this one out. And again, as we come into the closing, all of the articles are in the description of our video if you want to check them out at your leisure. Virginia megachurch donates $1 million to wipe out rent for 300 plus families and keep them from being evicted. This was published at goodgoodgood.co on April 9th of 2026 by Cameron Baker. When the mayor of Alexandria, Virginia, Aaliyah Gaskins, discovered that the agency overseeing the city's public housing owed $1 million in back rent, nearly 450 tenants suddenly faced eviction. I was curious how much did people owe, and I learned it was everything from $50 to some owing close to $30,000, Gaskins told NBC Washington. My concerns was what happens next. The Alexandria Redevelopment and Housing Authority operates more than 1,000 public housing units in the city, and if the families in those units were evicted, the city would be overwhelmed with need. According to the agency, it lost more than $1 million in unpaid rent from 445 of 1,000 public housing units, citing job market challenges, a rising cost of living, and lingering economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Gaskins went to the mayor's Interfaith Council to seek guidance, and Reverend Howard John Wesley of Alfred Street Baptist Church answered the call. The church would donate $1 million to cover the back rent of residents in need. The historically black church has been a presence in the community since 1803, building a robust congregation and raising funds throughout the year. According to the Christian Post, congregants raised the sum to cover the donation as part of their annual Seek Action, a time of fasting and prayer held earlier in 2026. It is my joy to share with you that after doing the audits and the ledgers and speaking with all the families and verifying debt, I want to let you know that with that Seek offering, you have helped stop the eviction of 338 families to the cost of $1,049,000, Wesley announced at a recent service. Every single penny is going outside the door of the church. It's connected to what we understand the purpose of fasting to be, Wesley added to the Washington Post. Oh, just saw something. Producer Donna said fire alarm is going off. 4 big fire trucks at the apartment. Oh no, Producer Donna, I hope you are all right. I hope everything is okay. And Sean said the feed locked up. Well, that's a pair of crises. One is far more important than the other. Hoping you're all right, Producer Donna. We will... Oh, I misread that. I thought there was a typo in there. There is no fire alarm. It's just weird that there's 4 big fire trucks outside. All right. Is the feed locked up for anybody else? We do all of these live, so just want to see if the feed is locked up. Becky says not now, so it might just be on Sean's end. All right, we'll keep going. Producer Donna says we now have 6 trucks and no alarm. It's getting worse. Alfred Street... I'm all flustered. Here we go. Alfred Street Baptist donation will be made to the local nonprofit Act for Alexandria, which will disperse the funds to ARHA after reviewing the confirmed ledger balances of residents facing eviction. Mark Jinks, chair of the ARHA board, said the agency plans to hire an independent accountant to make sure funds are distributed properly, according to the Washington Post. In addition to wiping out this rent debt, the Church and Interfaith Council will be part of an initiative to host individual meetings with each resident who fell behind on their rent, so they can make plans and provide resources to ensure it doesn't happen again. Our churches in the area, including other churches in the area, including Shiloh Baptist, will be part of this community service project. According to NBC Washington, these other faith groups will help fund follow-up services, like food banks and job skills training. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, but I serve Jesus Christ, and we have a duty to help our neighbors and look after the least of these, because that's what Jesus said we should do. Reverend Taft Quincy Heatley of Shiloh Baptist Church told NBC Washington. Issues in the housing authority will also be addressed, Gaskin said. Last year, the city fired the ARHA chief executive officer after discovering he had been living in one of the agency's units, even with 38,000 people on a wait list for housing. After this recent financial discrepancy, Gaskin said ARHA must put in new internal systems and staff to mitigate future issues like this. Wesley knew about these leadership issues prior to getting involved, the Washington Post reported, but said he did not want internal politics to interfere with taking care of people in need. People want to be connected to something bigger than themselves, Wesley told NBC Washington. And in the midst of the days and times in which we live, which seem to be so callous and cruel to people who are impoverished, here's a way to make a difference. It's not every day that I've got to do cheers to a megachurch, but sometimes I know that they get a lot of heat. I know that there are a lot of bad ones out there. Doesn't mean there aren't good ones. So, to everybody involved at the church, Alfred Street Baptist Church, everybody involved with this system to answer the prayers of 338 families and prevent eviction through a very generous donation and follow-up programs. Cheers. And amen, as per Becky. Okay, so, with everything that has been going on with space news, it is only apt that we have another Artemis 2 article. And this is the I'm Not Crying, You're Crying article. I also wanted to call it, In Space, Everyone Hears Us Cry. So, grab your tissues, strap in. I will copy and paste this into the chat for anyone to check out. Christian said, space. Thank you, Becky. Becky said, good one, Nick. I appreciate that. We all pretty much broke down right there, inside the Artemis 2 astronauts' emotional moment near the moon. This was published to space.com on April 9th of 2026 by Mike Wall. That was, I think, where the four of us were the most forged, the most bonded, and we came out of that really focused on that day ahead. Just after they broke a 56-year-old spaceflight record, the Artemis 2 astronauts shared a powerful moment that deepened their already profound bond. On Monday, April 6th, Artemis 2 made it farther from Earth than any crewed mission ever had before, topping the mark set by NASA's Apollo 13 moon mission in April 1970, which was at the time 248,655 miles, or 400,171 kilometers. The astronauts marked the occasion by celebrating a lost loved one. Artemis 2 Commander Reed Weissman's late wife, Carol Taylor Weissman, who died of cancer in 2020. Mission specialist Jeremy Hansen radioed down to Mission Control, asking permission to name a moon crater after Carol. There is a feature in a really neat place on the moon, and it is on the near side, far side boundary, Hansen said. In fact, it's just on the near side of that boundary, and so at certain times of the moon's transit around Earth, we will be able to see this from Earth. He added, it's a bright spot on the moon, and we would like to call it Carol. That beautiful moment had been in the works for more than a week, Wiseman revealed on Wednesday night, April 8th, during a call that he and the other Artemis II astronauts, Hansen, Victor Glover, and Christina Koch, held with reporters. My crewmates approached me when we were at Kennedy in quarantine, Wiseman said, referring to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the site from which Artemis II launched back on April 1st. The astronauts had arrived at the Kennedy Space Center to prep for that liftoff back on March of 27. They said the three of them had talked, and they would like to do this, he added. That was an emotional moment for me, and I just thought that was just a total treasure, that they had thought this through. They had thought through this, and they had offered this. Wiseman gave them his approval, but he had one request. I can't give the speech, he said. I can't give the talk. And Jeremy, the kind of guy he is, he said he would do it. And it was getting emotional there. Wiseman said he really lost it when Hansen spelled out Carol's name for mission control on Monday to make sure the crater would be properly identified. I think for me, that's when I was overwhelmed with emotion, Wiseman said. And I looked over and Christina was crying. I put my hand down on Jeremy's hand as he was still talking. It was right there on that rail, and I could just tell he was trembling. And we all pretty much broke down right there. That was the pinnacle moment of the mission, for him personally, Wiseman said. That was, I think, where the four of us were the most forged, the most bonded. And we came out of that really focused on that day ahead, he added. And that was a very busy and remarkable day. The astronauts flew around the far side of the moon on Monday, seeing some areas that had never been viewed by human eyes before. They were also treated to a celestial marvel, witnessing a total solar eclipse from beyond the moon. The flyby also charted the astronauts' journey home as lunar gravity slingshotted their Orion capsule back toward Earth. The quartet arrived home on Friday evening, April 10th, with a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego, which, as of the taping of this episode, they splashed down. They splashed down successfully. They were all right. Everything went swimmingly. So it was absolutely fantastic. I just remembered that this article was written on the 9th. They came back on the 10th. So all has been well. The Artemis II astronauts were already close before Carol Crater was a thing. Far before launch, in fact. They were selected for the mission back in April of 2023. So they've been training together intensely for the past 3 years. But their experiences off Earth have deepened and tightened those bonds, which extend beyond their Orion capsule to the entire mission team. Koch, for example, was asked on Wednesday night what she will miss most about being in space after she comes home. This was her response. I will miss this camaraderie. I will miss being this close with this many people and having a common purpose, a common mission. Getting to work on it hard every day, across hundreds of thousands of miles with a team on the ground. This sense of teamwork is something that you don't usually get as an adult. I mean, we are close, like brothers and sisters, and that is a privilege we will never have again. The Artemis II crew also proposed naming a moon crater after their Orion capsule, which they christened Integrity. Mission Control greenlit both suggestions, but that's not the end of the story. Before Carol Crater and Integrity Crater can get added to the official lunar maps, they must be approved by the International Astronomical Union. And if those aren't approved, I'm pretty sure we riot. Because that is amazing. To Carol Taylor Wiseman, the late wife of Mission Artemis II Commander Reed Wiseman, to everybody involved with the Artemis II program, or the Artemis program, to the 4 astronauts that went further than anyone else in the history of mankind and came back successfully, and to everybody that made that possible. Cheers. I'm not crying, you're crying. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you all again for tuning in or catching the replay on the Nick's News YouTube channel. Again, we're live every Sunday, and our next episode will be on April 19th of 2026. We encourage participation, so by all means, please send us suggestions for news brews, shout-outs, news quotes, and especially good news articles that we can present on future episodes of Nick's News. If you send a bunch, please spread them out across our 4 major categories, which again were science and technology, health and medicine, flora and fauna, aka plants and animals, and wholesome notes, the really nice ones we like to end on, like a megachurch stepping up to prevent 338 families from facing eviction, or 3 astronauts honoring their commander by naming a crater after his late wife. Also, please shoot for articles. We accept everything that y'all send, but we've got to find article versions. So if you send us stuff, we appreciate it very much if it's an article. If it's a news article, if it's not like just a Facebook post or a video. If it's an actual article, then we can actually work off of it and we can present it. So we appreciate everything you sent in. We really like articles. So. You can message us these suggestions on Facebook or Instagram, or email us at somebudgetstudios@gmail.com. Links are all in the description of this video. Feel free to like, subscribe, or comment on our content across all of the major media outlets: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We are on TikTok too, where we present our news nibbles every week on TikTok. So we're just trying to get good news and joy out into the algorithm, and please no SEO improvement advertisements. We're not interested. All of you continue to build Nick's News, continue to grow Nick's News. All of our numbers continue to go up, and I can't thank you all enough for that, for continuing to help us to spread good news and joy out into the universe. So, as always, thank you again. I love you all. Have a great night, and I will play us out.